Hey guys, it's Jeremy here at Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What we have for today, guys, is 20 more essential metal albums that I think every metalhead should have. I did a first video of this, I got a good response, and I wanted to create another list of 20 more. So this will be, 20 essential metal albums that everyone should have in their collection, part 2. And when creating this list, I actually just kind of kept going, and I got up to 40, and I kind of cut it off there. So I'm going to do a part 3. Stay tuned for that. Probably in a couple of videos from now. It'll probably be like later this week. So yeah, let's jump right in, guys. These are 20 more albums that I think every metalhead should have in their collection. They're essential and just classics. So starting off to appease the couple people in the comments last video that were, for some reason, super offended that I didn't have Penta in the list. I wanted to include one of their albums in their list. For this list, I do consider Penta at least to have a couple of their albums essential, and the album I went with was Vulgar Display of Power. I personally like Far Beyond Driven is their best album in my opinion, but I think Vulgar Display of Power is an essential album to have, and out of their catalog, I think it's the one everyone should just kind of have in general. The next one we got here, these aren't any kind of order, they're just kind of 20 albums I picked. So the next one here is the self-titled debut album from Metal Church. Fucking love Metal Church. They're pretty well known, but I think they should have been a lot bigger. The debut is really good, a cross of like traditional heavy metal and thrash metal, and it's just a really killer debut. One of the best heavy metal debuts of all time, and it's one I think everyone should definitely have in their collection. And number 3, or the next one here, I've got Obituary with Cause of Death. My personal favorite Obituary album of all time. I love Obituary, love their sound. They get that early 90s death metal, really raw, and just an essential album to have from that scene. And yeah, it's one that instantly came to my mind for that early Florida death metal scene for sure. And next we've got Left Hand Path of Entombed, one of the pioneer albums from the Swedish death metal scene. This is probably my favorite from that scene, to be honest. I love this album. The title track to open it up is amazing, Drowned. The whole album, top to bottom, is just a masterpiece. It's always been one of my favorite death metal albums, and it's just iconic, and definitely one everyone should have. The funny part about doing this list is there is quite a few albums on my list that I've created, all 3 parts, that I don't even have physical copies of, unfortunately. Just because every time I go to hunt them down, it's always like crazy expensive, because it's either an older album that's out of print for years and it's like $50, and I don't want to spend that kind of money on a CD. So I'm always on the hunt to find a couple of these that I don't have yet for a decent price, but this happens to be one of them. I just never owned a copy of Left Hand Path for some reason. So it's what I'm on the hunt for sure. The next one here, we got Killers from Iron Maiden. Definitely an essential album, one of the most iconic metal albums of all time. For the Paul Dano era, I'm actually more of a fan of the debut. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but Killers, I think, is definitely the more essential of the two, with songs like Wrathchild, Genghis Khan. The instrumental is really good, Purgatory, the title track, Killers. Just a really, really killer album. Diano sounds amazing, and just an all-time classic Maiden album that everyone should just have. Next we got here, I wanted to represent Gojira on the list. I think they're a band everyone should have in their collection. And I went with From Mars to Sirius as kind of, remarked as they're about kind of the most kind of fan favorite. A lot of people really enjoy this album. And I think it gives a good cross-section of what Gojira is about. It has like their early kind of death metal sound, but a lot of like the prog elements mixed in there. Just a really killer album. But you could really pick a ton of different Gojira albums, to be honest. I think a ton of them are really, really good, and this is definitely one everyone should have for sure. Next, we got Battle Hymns by Manowar. Love the early Manowar albums. The first like 3 or 4 albums are killer, and then they got kind of a little silly later on, but I think Battle Hymns is a must-have album, and this is another one that I've been on the hunt for, trying to find one for a decent price. But yeah, just a killer album, that fist in the air, heavy metal, grandiose, Conan the Barbarian kind of stuff. Really cool album. Definitely one everyone should have. Next we got here is pioneers of power metal, Halloween. I'm not a big power metal guy, but Halloween does it right. Their debut album I went with Walls of Jericho. I think it's one of their best albums and one everyone should definitely have. Keeper of the Seven Keys, part 1 and 2 are definitely two other ones I would say most people should have. But I really enjoy the debut the best overall. Really good power metal, speed metal. It's not like that super corny power metal that I personally hate. This has just got some more balls to it, more speed, and it's just a really good album. Next, we got another album represented from Motorhead, Ace of Spades. Had to put another album for my boys in Motorhead. Love these guys. And Ace of Spades is just so iconic. And probably the album most people know the most. But it's like Ace of Spades, like what more to say? With songs like the title track, Love Me Like a Reptile, Shoot You in the Back, Live to Win, Fast and Loose, Jailbait. Just so many good tunes on this album and must have. Next we got Blackout by Scorpions. Scorpions has been a band that's been around for a long time, and there's a ton of albums you could pick from these guys, but kind of went with Blackout just because it's their most commercially successful album and the one that had the most popularity, and I think it's just one that everyone should, or most people know, and I think you just have generally in their collection. No One Like You, of course everyone knows the song. Can't Live Without You, Arizona, You Give Me All I Need, like just so many good tunes on this one. The title track's killer. And yeah, I think this is just an essential album. It's iconic and a really good cross-section of Scorpions. Definitely the more commercial sound for sure, but a really good album. Next, we got one of my personal favorite albums of all time, top 10 for sure, Nightfall by Candlemass. This is my favorite doom metal album of all time. It's just so iconic. The album cover is killer. The top to bottom, the whole album is just kicks so much ass. When I hear doom metal, this is for me what I love. Their debut album is really good. I actually have that on my third list. I'll put that up there. I think that's an essential album as well. But I think Nightfall is my personal favorite and one everyone should definitely have. It's iconic and just legendary. Next, we went with another Ozzy album. I had Blizzard of Oz on my first list, and I wanted to also include Diary of a Madman. I think his first two albums are just so iconic and both essential and must-haves, with songs like Over the Mountain to open it up as a killer song, Flying High Again, Believer, Sado, Diary of a Madman, the title track is iconic. And of course, the last album for Ozzy to have Randy Rhoads on guitar, rest in peace, and just an iconic album that everyone should have. Next we got here another Merciful Fate album, Don't Break the Oath. I had Melissa on my first list. I kind of hemmed and hawed which one to put, and I said, fuck it, I'm going to put both. So I added Don't Break the Oath to the second list. I think it's iconic and almost on par with Melissa. They're both really, really good. And I think it's just one ever should have. Like the songs like The Oath, Gypsy, just so many good tunes on this one. And iconic heavy metal album that everyone should have. And next I got here is another album from my boys in Opeth. I had to put at least one more album from Opeth. I had Blackwater Park. That's their most iconic album by far. But I wanted to include Still Life as well. One of my favorite album covers of all time. I need to get a shirt of that still. But it's just a cool concept album. More when they're in the more death metal side, but a lot of proggy elements, like a lot of clean passages as well. And in my opinion, everyone should own this album. It's a masterpiece and it's just insanely good. Their new album kicks so much ass too. On a side note, top 3 album of the year for me, maybe even number 1. Next we got here another top 10 album of all time for me, Hall of the Mountain King by Sabotage. I'm surprised I didn't have this and Nightfall on my first list. Somehow I completely overlooked them and forgot about them or something, but yeah, this is a must-have. It's their best album by far in my opinion. Great guitar leads, great lead vocals, iconic album cover. It's just their best album and an essential for sure. Next we got another album from Metallica. I went with Ride the Lightning. I think Master Puppets is probably the most essential in that sense, but I really wanted to include Ride the Lightning too. It's just such a legendary album, and it's my personal favorite from the band. Fight Fire with Fire, the title track, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice. Creeping Death is my favorite Metallica song of all time. From top to bottom, it's a masterpiece, no weak songs, and it's just a must-have. Everyone should have this, and I'm sure most people do. Next, we have another one from Megadeth, Peace Sells But Who's Buying. Rust in Peace, I consider by far their biggest essential album. It's their best by far. It's their masterpiece. But I think Peace Sells is just really, really good and should be included in the list as well. I think those two are the only ones I would put from Megadeth. But this is just an iconic album. The Conjuring, Peace Sells, Good Morning Black Friday, My Last Words. Just some really good tunes on this one. I was never a huge Megadeth fanboy. I like a handful of their albums a lot, and then the rest are just like, they're just decent. I'm not like, I was never a massive fan, but those two albums are iconic and must-haves in my opinion. Next, we're going over to Germany for more Teutonic thrash. I only included Creator on the first album, so I wanted to have more of them as well. So I went with Agent Orange by Sodom. Definitely their most popular album, I'd say, and arguably their best. It's just a really good, refined thrash metal album. Still super aggressive and kind of dirty like Sodom normally does, but it's just a really, really good thrash album and a must-have. Next, I wanted to include a band from Accept. I went with Restless and Wild. I consider this definitely an essential. Fast as a Shark is such a heavy song for its time and just a killer song. The title track is killer as well. And yeah, this is the first album that came to my mind when I thought of Accept, and everyone should have Accept in their collection because they kick ass and the whole catalog is solid. And lastly here, I've got one from Thrashers from New Jersey, Overkill. I went with Taking Over, their second album. Really, really strong album. I think this is essential. I almost went with their debut, but I think this one's a little bit better. And Wrecking Crew, Power Surge, Electro Violence, Fear His Name. Just so many great tunes on here, and Bobby Blitz and the boys just killed it on this album. And I think every thrash head especially should have this album in their collection. So thanks for watching, guys. List down below some 20 more of your albums you really think are essential. I do have a part 3 coming, so stay tuned for that. It'll probably be in a couple of videos from now later in the week. And I'm also going to be doing a top 20 essential hard rock albums. That's why I didn't see a lot of albums like, Wish You Were Here or Appetite for Destruction, those kind of albums, because I consider them hard rock. So I wanted to do a separate kind of video just for 20 essential hard rock albums. So stay tuned for that as well. So thanks for watching, guys. Again, list your picks down below and keep it metal.